Edition of the OmniTalk Spotlight Series, the series that highlights the people, the companies, and the technologies that are shaping the future of retail. I'm one of your hosts, Ann Mazenga.
And I'm your other host, Chris Walton.
And today we have two very special guests to talk to us about how retailers and brands should be approaching their media and marketing strategy. Because I've got news for you, Chris.
Yes.
Everyone listening probably could be doing it much better.
I know I could, Ann. I know I could. For sure, without a doubt.
So to help all of us retail marketing and media folks and some other important departments within retailers, which we will get to later, we've invited Ovative's Troy Neidermire and Beth McKigney to show us how to help get on that path to unified marketing success. So Troy and Beth, thank you for joining us. Welcome to OmniTalk. Troy, I know you and Chris go way back, right?
Yeah, we do. Yes. We have a connection through my father-in-law, which is fun for the rest of my life. But yeah, we go way back.
Yes, we do. And Beth, it's great to meet you for the first time as well. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, all right. Well, let's get started. So, Beth, let's go to you first. So tell us a little bit about Ovative and your role there.
Yeah, Ovative is a full funnel media and measurement firm, really with the vision to transform the measure of marketing success. So we work with our clients to really shift marketing from an expense center to really a driver of sustainable business growth. And so we work with a variety of verticals like healthcare, CPG, travel, and hospitality. But retail is really our largest, with much of our leadership having deep retail roots. So we have the pleasure of working with some really great brands in the retail space like Coach, the Home Depot, American Eagle, and Aerie, all brands that are really looking to reinvent how they measure marketing's impact and utilize that to drive really growth for their business. So we've really been focused on that the whole 11 years I've been at Ovative. We started out in media. We've then moved on and developed advanced measurement capabilities to really help measure marketing's more holistic impact on the business beyond kind of some of those digital KPIs. And we've now developed a full suite of MarTech products that we call the Emerge Suite, which is really about how do we measure the holistic impact, but not just measure and move to activation and getting better signals to the media platforms to activate against. So my role is to develop those capabilities. So I lead our measurement and technology teams, really focus on developing proprietary tech that at the end of the day, we're looking to drive better outcomes for our clients.
Got it. So you lead measurement essentially at Ovative.
Measurement and technology, yeah.
And technology. Wow, cool. All right, nice. I can't wait for this conversation. It's going to be great. All right, Troy, like Ed said, you and I go way back at Target. We spent a lot of time working together in the digital commerce space. But for those of in our audience that don't know you, explain a little bit about your role there and how it differs from what Beth does.
Yeah. So again, Troy Neidermire. I have about a 20-year career in retail, digital marketing, kind of a specialty maybe in web and media analytics. Where I met you, Chris, was at Target. I led media activation for Target and was there for about 14 years prior to making a move to Shutterfly, where I led media for them. And then ultimately landed here with some former Target colleagues like Beth, who was actually my first manager at Target.
Wow, no way, really? Retail's such a small world, isn't it? My God.
It is. But it's important the people you work with. So it's one of the reasons why I'm at Ovative is there's really great people. But I've been here for a year and a half, and I report to Beth, and so I'm the vice president of measurement and enabling solutions. So enabling solutions is things like some of those foundational enablers to running and activating media and measuring media. So like reporting and data management, tag management, product feed management. I have a team who does that. But really the biggest portion of my team is a measurement solutions team. And so at Ovative, we really think about, team and the people that are in it, the method, and then the tech all being like combined in the approach that we take. So the measurement solutions team is really the team that helps clients adopt and drive organizational change needed to grow their business through better marketing measurement. So we primarily do that with our measurement model that we call MAP, or our product that we call MAP, which is a unified measurement model It's kind of known for its weekly outputs. So we really want to bring actionable solutions forward. So we actually run our model weekly. So last week's data, we have a customer level model within that, and we really like to think about it as the most actionable measurement tool. But my team really helps the client adopt that and helps them really evolve and set their marketing measurement strategy.
Well, you said a few times this word that I'm going to bring back up, and that's measurement. If we were playing a measurement drinking game, I think we'd be at like 15, 20 sips of water by now.
I wouldn't be able to do this
water,
podcast,
right?
Dan.
Yeah, right. That's why I said water, Chris. It was like,
Right.
we're playing a drinking game of water. But no, Beth, I want to start with you. Let's talk about this. We did this we mentioned it a little bit in the intro, but let's start with what's not working. Why can't the retailers and brands who are listening to this episode, why can't they use the same old, like, tried and true methods of measuring the success of their marketing media campaigns anymore? What's different?
Yeah, I think typical media metrics like ROAS, reach and frequency, CPA, they really aren't aligned with measuring business outcomes. They aren't tied directly to driving revenue and customer file health. And at the end of the day, that's marketing's task. They're tasked with driving incremental revenue and really driving that customer. And those metrics just aren't directly tied and aren't as actionable as they need to be. And so at Ovative, we really help and focus our clients on measuring marketing's impact on business outcomes that matter. And so we kind of think about 4 pillars. The first being enterprise sales. We want to look at not just how is digital media driving digital sales, but how is it helping drive store sales as well, or call centers, or if you've got a wholesale aspect of your business. So you're looking at the full enterprise revenue driven by marketing. The next one is incrementality. So we don't want to just look at attributed sales or attributed ROAS, but how is marketing driving that incremental volume to the business, that causal impact on driving those revenue and customer. Third would be customers. Marketing is not just about driving near-term revenue, right? It's really tasked with driving an overall healthy customer file. So driving new customer acquisition, retaining those existing customers and getting more value from that existing audience. And we want to make sure we're looking at marketing's value and helping drive and fuel the business for the long term. And then lastly, margin. We want to make sure that marketing's driving profitable sales, not just driving, top line, like a ROAS would show you the top line impact of marketing, but bringing it down to a margin figure so we can make sound investment decisions, evaluate that versus other areas that the business could invest in to grow. And so I think that's been a critical element of how we look at media return. And so we call that enterprise marketing return, which is really a unifying metric, kind of getting all of those factors into one number that you can use
one number
in order to drive your business.
Interesting. So you're weighting those different things: enterprise sales, incrementality, the customer file impact. You're weighting that all in one number. Is that how we should think about this?
Yes, think about that as the new return metric, the new ROAS. It's getting it to one figure that you can use to make those investment decisions. And it's been hugely powerful for our clients, really unifying or kind of getting behind that one metric and bringing folks like finance and marketing together and really getting finance to understand, that's going to drive the business and really rallying behind that. So take Coach as an example. They really embraced EMR early on in our partnership, and they brought finance along through that. They really helped them understand the measurement, buy into the approach we were taking. And that metric and how that aligned with driving the business outcomes that finance was looking for. And so we're able to align on a EMR with finance where they were comfortable with variable budgets. So as long as EMR was at a certain threshold, the marketing team was able to keep spending. And it really drove huge business growth for them. And they saw a 30% revenue growth despite headwinds in stores and inventory and other macroeconomic trends. And it really came down to having that one metric that could really the organization could get behind.
This is fascinating to me, Beth, because as a former marketing person at a large retailer, this has always been a struggle where you have the one side, the creative point of view, saying we have to have the budget to do these executions, these impact driving executions, but really having a difficult time trying to show to the rest of the agency. Chris will say, because he was in merchandising and other departments who I think are typically in conflict with marketing, like, hey, we need that money for these things that are, and there's this battle back and forth. But what have you seen, like customers like Coach that you mentioned, where are they when they come to you? And what's kind of the unlock for those departments to come together to kind of embrace EMR and be like, okay, this is gonna help us going forward? What are they able to do right away that kind of helps them justify kind of going with this method?
Yeah, it really runs the gamut of where our clients at, but I think the common theme is they don't have like a really well-rounded media mix. They don't know how to value, some of those upper funnel tactics that you mentioned. They're maybe too reliant on some of the performance tactics and don't have a good healthy mix between traditional and digital. And so, we really help them quantify, better quantify some of those that upper funnel media and really get that to what's that going to drive your business, even if it is going to take a bit to generate that return, and help them get to a healthier mix that's not just going to drive value today, but is going to help them, really get a customer file that's going to help them drive value into the future and really set them up for that long-term success.
Yeah, Troy, you have some thoughts to throw in here too.
Yeah, I would add on, like, Beth mentioned a lot of our customers or a lot of our clients are starting at different points.
Right.
But I do think most of them are starting at a point of like, what we're doing right now is not working, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are on like a last click digital ROAS and they're like, we know this isn't right, but we don't know where to go or where to start or how to do it. So again, that's where like my team, comes in and really helps with that. It's like, okay, you're here. Well, let's just take this first step, right? Let's move from last click attributed ROAS to some sort of measure of incrementality. Okay. Now we're here. Now let's think about the customers we're driving. So, we kind of work through that, but most of our clients are at a spot that they're like, we know this isn't right, but there's so many models out there and so many tools and so many things. Like, where do we just get started? And so that's kind of what helps us move along that journey with our clients.
Yeah, there's kind of a walk, crawl, run, or crawl. I always do that. There's a crawl, walk, run approach to this, right? You don't want to walk before you crawl. But and so what you said, Troy, makes a ton of sense. But I want to go back to something, Beth, you said too, which is variable budgets. I first heard that term, God, it was probably 7 years ago. I was having a conversation with the CEO of Wayfair, and I remember he blew my mind because he said, I don't have budgets. I don't have marketing budgets. I just react in the moment to what is happening and then decide where the allocation of the money is going to go. And so as you talk about this crawl, walk, run approach where you align on the metric, is that what you're trying to enable? And is that what you espouse at Ovative in terms of how people should think about their budget allocations? I'm curious what your take is on that.
Yeah. I mean, if you
Yes.
can, you're going to be able to generate a healthy return, then you should keep spending, and that's going to fuel your business growth. If the opportunity is there, and you got to, to Troy's point about actionability and timely insights, like you got to have a measurement tool in place that you have confidence is giving you a timely read. That's why, quarterly MMM is challenging, but if you can get to a weekly read or really timely insights and what's happening in the market, and there's headroom, keep funneling money in as long as your finance team's bought in. That's why that finance partnership is so critical. If there's that alignment, that understanding, that buy-in, keep kind of going after those and capitalizing on the opportunities in the market when you can.
And is that a sea change for how most retailers you work with initially think about this, or am I misinterpreting that?
Yeah, I think it is. I'll chime in. I think Beth mentioned our vision is to transform the measure of marketing success. And I think the start of that is a lot of marketing is managed as an expense versus as an investment. Mm-hmm. So I think like really taking that mindset shift of like, wait, this is an investment. Why are we looking at ways to cut this, right? Why are we looking at ways to reduce this expense? Let's look at ways to grow this investment and grow our business.
Make it work harder for us. Yeah. Right. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's shift gears a little bit now, or let's extend the conversation. So we've talked, and I feel like almost weekly on our Fast Five lately about this topic, but we've talked about the new ways retailers and brands can market to consumers, whether that's ads on social media platforms or participating even on ads on screens inside of stores. You know, there's all this talk about that from like things like cooler screens or TVs at the checkout lane. So
Yeah.
we're curious, as people look to attribute media inside a store, what strategies have you seen be successful for the retailers and brands that you work with?
Yeah, I can take this one. So I'm glad you asked this question because we actually get the question all the time. So I could talk about, Coach's partnership with Little Nas and how that campaign took off on TikTok and how, they executed that, or Duluth Trading Company had an awesome content integration with, the hit show Yellowstone. Like there's lots of examples of these, but I'm not going to give you or the users the answer that they want, which is the general, this is what's working, go do this. Everyone kind of wants to get into that, right? The tactic.
Right.
What should I do? Just tell me which one to do. But I think what's more important is to step back and like where we're seeing clients really have success with these different types of activations is how they're approaching it. And so really thinking about it as an additive approach to their program. So, we just talked about thinking not as an expense and how do I cut, but how do I think of marketing as an investment?
Right.
So they're taking a full funnel strategy. They're understanding, where these new tactics complement and again are additive to that strategy. They're really clear on what they're trying to accomplish. I see a lot of people saying, oh, I just need to diversify my mix, or I just need to move up the funnel. But why, right? How is that additive? And don't create a hole in your funnel by moving it somewhere else. So, the successful engagements we're seeing, have that, like, what are the true outcomes from the beginning? They're thinking of ways to identify that additive budget. So we just talked about, incremental budget or investing more, but there's also, shift from ineffective to effective. Versus pulling from the bottom where you're capturing demand to go generate demand just to have your competition capture it, right? Those are places where we see people fall down. Also, you talked about, crawl, walk, run. I think where people are finding success or where clients are finding success is when they have that entry strategy. So knowing that if you go into a new strategy, like you talked about, that won't be optimized on day one. So thinking through the audience, how are we going to optimize this? How are we going to ramp investment as we learn what's working? We see a lot of people go big, right? And you talked about, creatives want to go do this big creative thing, or, merchants are like, hey, just go do this. We see a lot of people take that approach, or a lot of clients want to take that approach of like, I'm just going to go big, $10 million next 3 weeks. We're going to measure it. Well, that rarely is successful on day one.
Right.
So,
well, it's kind of just somebody like guessing or like using their experience to kind of predict the best mix or media mix, like Beth was talking about earlier.
Exactly. So, and then it's rooted in a measurement strategy. So Beth talked about EMR. So just making sure you are measuring the holistic. Don't just look at the platform metrics or, compare this platform to this platform. Make sure you're measuring it from the whole. So, in summary, like, I guess it's not about the, like, what tactics are working in general. It's which tactics are additive and incremental for your business in your strategy. And I think really having that approach and thinking about it that way is better. I'll give you guys something though, because I know that again, everyone asks that question. They want the tactics.
We want an example, Troy.
Yeah. So we do with, I mentioned we have our map product is our measurement model and our measurement platform. We do publish what we call EMR power rankings every year. And so that is the channels and the tactics that are rising up the ranks of having the highest EMR. So if somebody wants to find that, you can literally Google Ovative EMR power rankings and it'll bring you to our website. But we are seeing CTV, TikTok, streaming audio, like all the things you guys are talking about. We are seeing those rise up the EMR power rankings as people are learning how to use those channels and how to optimize into those channels.
That's something for us to key in on, and we should look at that and talk about that more on our show too. That's cool. I like that. I love power rankings. Yeah. Troy, I don't want to let you off the chair yet though, or off the hook yet. So like I talked a little, like digital attribution versus in-store attribution. Is there any trick to the in-store piece in terms of getting that right? Or is it just two sides of the same coin and you have to think about it, similarly, but just adapt your approach a little bit differently? Like, what's the best advice you have for the retailers that are trying to venture into that space for the first time? Because lots of people are.
Where we're at today with modeling approaches and data sciences that go behind, like we have all the data as the inputs. So we really can model those. And that can be a really strong foundation to start to do that. I think in the last, 10 to 15 years, as digital came up, like everyone got so obsessed with this, click path and like, but you can model a lot of this stuff. And I think starting there and then set on a foundation of a really strong testing platform, like you can measure in-store return very easily without having every digital touch point, right? And every exposure in that model. So I think that's a place to start. And you're seeing MMMs, which were used a long time ago, start to become, what's being used again as the primary source.
Right. Without having to put a smart card in your store potentially too, as the attribution vehicle, literally. So yeah, Beth, what would you add there?
Yeah, I think people undervalue or don't do enough testing. You can do in-market tests and measure the full enterprise impact by holding out different markets or hovering up, depending on what you're trying to test. But testing is an easy start to really understand the full impact of your marketing. And then, as Troy said, the tried and true media mix modeling. There's been a lot of evolutions and modeling capabilities, and it's incredibly powerful and can really help you, get a fuller view of your marketing value.
Well, Beth, I'm wondering if you can't like almost take us back a little bit into where some of these companies that you've mentioned that you've worked with, Duluth Trading Company was one. I know Domino's is another one, but where are they when they're starting with Hue, and kind of what does a successful case study look like? Successful experimentation, successful media mix models. Like what's the kind of like start, middle, and end of that?
Troy mentioned a lot of times they start by they're still looking at last click ROAS in their web analytics tool, whether that's GA or Adobe. And so we start by really bringing the concept of VMR. So even if we don't have the metric in place, really thinking about how is marketing driving enterprise sales, customer incrementality, and bringing return down to margin. A lot of times we then are putting like our measurement tool in place, MAP, or honestly working with other third-party measurement tools if that's what's in place there, and really helping them better quantify a more holistic view of marketing's impact. So ideally we'd have MAP in place, get into EMR, and we start slow, as Troy said, and looking at how do we diversify the mix by first looking at enterprise sales and making smarter investment decisions and diversifying their media mix through looking at enterprise and then bringing in customer and bringing in smarter customer strategies as well. I think Duluth Trading Company you mentioned is a good example. They started out, they historically had really leaned on store growth and really great branding to fuel their business. And they saw really great success. But, imagine get into the pandemic area 2020, they really had to reinvent and really think differently about how marketing a more holistic marketing strategy could really fuel their growth. And so they looked at, diversifying from heavy mix and linear TV and direct mail, but had the right measurement tools in place, had the right testing strategy to really step into other tactics. Some of the ones that Troy mentioned, connected TV, digital audio and video, and they've got a really powerful influencer campaign. And now, the CFO is not asking when's that direct mail campaign going to drop, and thinking that that's going to fuel next week's sales, but they're really, when is that influencer campaign going to be in market, and kind of what's that return going to be, and how's it going to fuel the business? It's really reinvented how they think about marketing, and they're really driving great outcomes from their marketing program.
Well, Beth, you mentioned finance being in the room. I'm just curious, like who's in the conversation about deploying MAP early on? Because when I was in marketing meetings and meetings with our media strategy teams at Target, there was not a finance person in the room. It was very much marketing, media, maybe a brand manager, but like what's changing there? And maybe if you have some examples like with Duluth or others that kind of looks different today and why.
Honestly, the biggest part of the most of the organization we want to be to understand enterprise marketing return. I think marketing and finance are the key. Like that's where we start with our clients.
Okay.
From day one, we want finance to understand the measurement that our client has, and that they, feel comfortable with the methodology. They understand its limitations and where it shines, and that they're aligned with the, what is that? We call it kind of a hurdle rate. So the variable budget, like what are they aligned? Can we set a hurdle rate with which we can spend to and really bring them apart? They're part of the test design. If we're doing a geo test, they're buying into that methodology, and then maybe even help validating the test. We just really want them as a critical partner, but merchandising too. Like,
yeah,
I mentioned merchandising earlier, and I think it's important that everybody in the organization understands what marketing is trying to drive and why, and how that's helping fuel the business. And I just think that's a critical part to just, and EMR gives you that one metric that everybody can understand and kind of get behind.
Well, and like Chris was saying too earlier on, I think if you're going to start to change your mix in real time or adapt to what you're seeing success with in the market, you almost have to have everybody involved and having one dashboard to look at, I imagine, in order for that to be successful. Is that true?
Yes. It takes everybody understanding that. And, it's and you also have to have the right merchandise that we're featuring, and and it just takes, it all needs to come together in the marketing plan. And so I think that's critical that everybody understands and is looking at and understanding the same metrics.
But the other thing I'd say too is the beauty of digital marketing particularly is that it's not an all or nothing approach either. You can be very segmented in terms of how you try to tackle this problem, right? And how you try to get the organization on board with it. You can run the whole organization really on the old way and bring a portion of your spend up to speed on the new way too. So there's a lot of different ways to tackle this problem as you think about it, because and that's the beauty of digital, because it's so flexible in what it allows us to do. So all right. So Troy, I got to ask you, because one of the things I loved about working with you is you always had these sayings that are quite memorable. And one that I remember is you always used to say, most models are wrong, but some are useful. Explain to the audience what you mean by that saying in particular.
Yeah. Me and my sayings. First of all, I stole that from somebody. I stole that from a podcast. So I should probably go figure out who said that.
This is about attribution, Troy. So that's probably a good idea.
I know, right? So yeah, don't give me credit for my quotes. I just use them. But I talked a little bit, in what my team does and how we approach it as the power of team, the power of the method or the approach, and the power of the tech. And I think this quote of, all models are wrong, or most models are wrong and some are useful, kind of gets to the heart of that. And it's quite simple of like, most measurement models like MMMs, so the tech portion of that's only a part of the equation. If you're not using them correctly, the method, or they're not adopted by your organization, like we just talked about with the CFO, the team, are they really useful? So, using them correctly starts with inputs. Like we've all heard kind of crap data in, crap data out, right? Models are predictive in nature, so there's a degree of accuracy, and feeding them really strong inputs is like test results, is going to produce better outputs. So, there are better models than, out there, and you can compare on that, but it is only a piece of the puzzle. The harder part is that organizational adoption that we talked about. If at the end of the day, the CFO is like, I don't trust it. I'm not giving you more money. I don't care what your return is. Like, well then, like, is that really useful? If you haven't built how you're going to use that model into your operating, model and your operating procedures, like, are you really actioning on it? Are you making budgeting and mixed decisions in a timely manner? I mean, we see clients running MMMs that give them quarterly results from like 2 quarters ago. Like in retail in today's environment, like, is that useful? Right. So, that's kind of what I love about that quote is, I feel like people are running around looking for the silver bullet model, right? The silver bullet
false
measurement.
precision.
Yeah, and we're going to outdo the competition because we have this new methodology or feature. And again, the models are getting better, like the technology is getting better, the data science is getting better, but what really makes a model useful is the actions you take.
Well, you guys, let's close the conversation with this. I'm curious, based on that, Troy, what you were just explaining. What's one action that you'd recommend for those who are listening to take now as they head into their media and marketing planning for 2024? Troy, I'll start with you. Let's kind of keep the conversation from your last sentiment going, and tell us what you'd recommend that those listening start off with.
I think it's as simple as don't let your measurement strategy be an afterthought. Just setting some KPI targets and buying a measurement tool is not a measurement strategy. And we talked about what actions are you going to take? And really actionability being, what's going to make a measurement strategy useful. So, how does your operating model need to evolve? Who's driving that across your organization? You need a champion. Who are the key stakeholders you need to bring along? You can say whatever you want within the walls of marketing, but if you don't have that budget, and you have somebody over there just trying to cut an expense, you're not going to drive. So don't let it be an afterthought. Another one of my sayings, Chris, that I like to always throw out, which is also not my own quote, and I don't know who said it originally, but if you can't measure it, you can't prove it. And if you can't prove it, you can't improve it. So, again, don't let that measurement be an afterthought. If you're really looking to improve and grow your business, make sure that you can measure it.
Right. In a productive way that makes sense to the enterprise, not just one marketing department. Beth, how about you?
I'd focus kind of maybe within that measurement strategy of really developing a testing program, really focused on generating learnings against your marketing strategies. Right. So if we talk a lot with our clients kind of about 3 testing pillars. What are those strategic big bets you want to place, those new strategies, and putting a testing plan against that? There's those optimization tests. So how are you refining what you're already doing to generate better returns? And then calibration tests. So how are you honing your measurement? What are you doing those in-market tests so you can feed that back into your measurement to make it more precise and more accurate. So I think American Eagle is a great example. We've really partnered with them to build out a holistic testing framework that really maps to American Eagle's business goals. And so they've got pillars of customer, brand, and revenue. And then they take a cross-section of the strategic tests, the optimization tests, and the calibration tests. And so some examples, they're looking to transform their brand health and the affinity for the brand through testing creator-led activations versus brand-led. And so they've got a whole testing plan and learning agenda against that. They're trying to nurture high-value customers by really testing kind of the mix of product and categories and that they feature in their marketing, as well as kind of the timing of those messages within media to really maximize customer lifetime value. So it really takes a well-rounded testing program. And I think that's something that folks should be focused on, that I think that can really transform their marketing and how it can drive impact for the business.
Beth, you made me think of something just now when you mentioned like creator-led programs. There are so many new ideas coming out, new tactics for marketing, for influencer campaigns. How easy is it for someone who's working, on a traditional measurement plan versus like say the EMR platform that you have at Ovative? How different is that new tactic to test in using both of these platforms? Because I imagine it's very difficult on using the old ROAS models versus something like EMR.
Yeah, I think it is challenging because the KPIs you're getting aren't again, they're not tied to the outcomes that you're looking to drive. And so especially with a creator strategy, the KPIs you're getting back are challenging to connect to, what is that actually driving for my business. But if you're thoughtful about testing into those strategies. You can, have a more controlled environment where you can really isolate that impact. Or if you've got a media mix model so that you can feed that the right inputs with creator campaigns in order to really understand and isolate that impact. And it does take, really being thoughtful about kind of how am I going to get a read on this and really understand what it's driving for my business versus just kind of some of those, those fluffier KPIs that really aren't driving the impact that you need.
Right.
Yeah, I would just add on there as well, like we think about EMR as a metric, that we've talked a lot about, but we also think about it as a mindset and an approach. So, as you're trying to measure like a creative-led or a creator-led influencer, campaign or something like that, like having that mindset of like, okay, how am I looking at the holistic enterprise? Okay, how am I going to get to incrementality? Okay, is this a different product mix? Am I thinking about the profit implications of that? Okay, what customers am I bringing? So like, I think that mindset helps to look at what metrics you have, what metrics you don't have, how you'd step into testing and start to, again, kind of that crawl, walk, run into an EMR as well.
Right. And the right supplemental mix with those creator-led campaigns too. Like, where are you seeing other activity? Is it in store? Is it online? Is it, like what's happening then when you really push some of those newer campaigns, and how are you evolving your media mix to support that and to continue to see that growth, I imagine.
Yep.
Well, on that note, thank you both, Troy and Beth. This was great. Like Ann and I got to ask a lot of the questions that have been on our minds doing our weekly podcast here for the last probably 1.5 to 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, Ann, right? Like this has been
easily.
It's an ongoing topic. There's a lot of confusion out there, a lot of questions that I have just even in the day to day. So Beth, if people want to get in touch with either one of you, pick your brains even more, learn about EMR, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can, they'll find us on the people page at ovative.com, or they can reach out to us on LinkedIn.
Awesome. The people page. That's great alliteration. That's a hallmark of us at OmniTalk. So, all right. Well, that wraps us up. Thanks again to Troy Neidermire and Beth McKigney of Ovative for sitting down with us today. And on behalf of all of us at OmniTalk, as always, be careful out there.